I've been deaf my whole life, but my fiance never made a big deal out of it. For 7 years, he was nothing but sweet and considerate. I thought we'd be happy together forever. But then, something unexpected happened. I regained my hearing. And with it, I overheard a conversation I wish I hadn't. He was talking to his friends, bragging. "You all know Sarah's the only one I care about. Every time I'm with Barbara, I feel disgusted. She doesn't hold a candle to Sarah, not in the slightest. It's like comparing a dim streetlight to the full moon." The day his precious Sarah came back from abroad, I knew it was over between us. So, I brought my new boyfriend to meet him and made sure to kiss him right in front of my ex. His face turned red with rage, and I swear, he looked like he was ready to explode. Chapter 1. Sarah. In the middle of what should have been an intimate moment with me, he muttered her name. Again. My heart sank, but to be honest, I'd stopped feeling much of anything by now. "Barbara, you're such a sweetheart." Afterward, he stroked my hair like he always did, as if nothing had happened. If I hadn't heard him say, "Sarah," I might have fallen for his act. I might have believed that this tenderness meant something. But he thought I couldn't hear him. What he didn't know was that I'd gotten my hearing back a while ago. His phone buzzed suddenly, and when he glanced at the screen, his expression shifted just for a second. Panic, guilt. Something flickered across his face. But he recovered quickly, flashing me that same practiced smile. Using sign language, he said, "Barbara, darling, something urgent came up at work. Be good and wait for me at home, okay?" I nodded, playing along like I always did. If I hadn't seen Sarah pop up in the notification, I might have believed him. I might have believed the whole loving, devoted act. We've been together for 7 years. When I was deaf, I couldn't hear the whispers, the lies, the way he talked when I wasn't around. Then, a few months ago, a freak accident. Some kid accidentally hit me with a ball, restored my hearing. It felt like a miracle at first. I was excited to tell David and share the news with him. But then, I overheard a conversation that changed everything. "You've been with her for so long now," one of his friends teased. "You're falling for her, aren't you?" David laughed. A cold, dismissive laugh that made my stomach twist. "Come on, man. You know Sarah's the only one I care about. If she hadn't gone abroad, I never would have ended up with her. And get this, every time we're together, I call her Sarah. She actually thinks it's sweet, like I'm being romantic or something." Each word hit me like a punch to the gut, sharp and painful. I stood there frozen, my eyes wide. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was about to cave in. The tears came before I could stop them. How could they not? This man, the one I thought I loved, the one I trusted, was nothing but a liar. A coward. "Hey, she's coming over." "Shut up," one of his friends muttered. David didn't even flinch. He smirked. "Relax. She can't hear us anyway." He turned toward me, slipping back into his usual routine, wearing that fake, concerned look I used to fall for. "What are you doing here alone? You know it's not safe. If anything happened to you, I'd be worried sick." He signed the words like he always did, but the warmth I used to feel was long gone. I just stared at him, numb. 7 years. 7 years of love, of trust, of thinking we had something real. What a joke. "Barbara? You okay? You look pale." My voice was barely audible when I finally spoke. "I tripped on my way here." His face instantly filled with concern. "You've got to be more careful. Let me see, are you hurt?" He fussed over me, checking for injuries, and only relaxed when he saw I was fine. "You really need to be more careful," he scolded gently. "Next time, call me. I'll come get you." Then, he pulled me into his arms, holding me like everything was normal. But all I felt was cold. How do people do it? How do they show you love with one hand while stabbing you in the heart with the other? Is that some kind of special talent? Maybe. Maybe it's time I learned how to do the same. Chapter 2. I didn't tell David that I could hear again. And I didn't rush to break up with him either. 7 years is a long time. You don't just walk away from that without a second thought. For a long time, he was the one bright spot in my life, the light that cut through all the tough times. I had crushed on him in silence for 3 years, never daring to say a word. Then, after the accident that left me deaf, I kept my distance from him even more. I knew I wasn't good enough for him. I didn't deserve someone like David. So I started pulling away. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. The same guy who once barely noticed me suddenly changed. He started looking at me differently, his eyes soft and serious. "Will you be with me? Let me take care of you," he said. The sunlight hit his face just right, and his smile was so warm, so genuine. It was like he was the light at the end of a long dark tunnel, showing me the way forward. If I'd known sooner that he had a thing for girls with a disability, maybe I wouldn't have wasted so much time keeping my distance. But as it turns out, he never really cared about me. His offer to take care of me? That was just his way of dealing with the fact that his dream girl had left the country and rejected him. It was just a convenient backup plan. The girl who had always been there, waiting in the wings. Any talk of saving or protecting me was nothing more than a temporary fix for his bruised ego. Once I realized that, I stopped trying so hard. I went back to being the quiet, unassuming girl he'd always known. And after hearing him talk about how much he missed Sarah over and over again, my heart just shut down. The more he went on about her, the more I felt numb. After a while, I couldn't stand him. He disgusted me. In fact, I started to believe that he wasn't good enough for me. He was just a liar, a hypocrite. It was almost laughable. Then, as you'd expect, his precious Sarah came back. And of course, he went running to see her behind my back. I'll never forget that day. I was sitting right there, watching him take the call. "You're back? I'll come pick you up right now. You must feel so out of place after being away for so long. I can't let you be on your own. Come on, you know I don't have a girlfriend. You're the only one in my heart." He was whispering sweet nothings to another woman while holding my hand, squeezing it like we were the most in love couple in the world. Listening to them flirt, something inside me finally clicked. I don't even know when it happened, but at some point, all the love I had for David just disappeared. To him, it was nothing. Just another call. His only concern was whether Sarah was comfortable, whether she was happy. As for me, his so-called girlfriend, my feelings didn't matter. After all, in his eyes, I was just the deaf girl. Without him, I had nothing. So why would I expect anything more? The night Sarah returned, David didn't come home. His excuse? Working late, of course. But I had a bad feeling. So I went to his office and waited. I sat outside all night in the freezing cold. I didn't feel anything. Not the cold, not the numbness creeping into my fingers. Nothing. Around a.m., I texted him. "You must be exhausted from working all night. I brought you some breakfast, can I come up?" His reply came fast. "No need, Barbara. It's dangerous outside, and with your hearing, you know it's not safe. Stay home, okay? But I'm already downstairs." There was a long pause. At 8 o'clock sharp, David finally showed up. He looked at me, all concerned like he was really worried. "Barbara, you shouldn't be out here. You know your health isn't great. Didn't I tell you not to come out like this? I was so worried about you." He played the part perfectly, as if he really cared. But this was the same man who left me sitting out in the cold for 3 hours without a second thought. People passing by shot me looks of envy, probably thinking I had the perfect boyfriend. They had no idea. They didn't know that just hours ago, he was with someone else. And the red marks on his neck? They were all the proof I needed. Chapter 3. I didn't say much. I just handed him the cold breakfast I'd brought. At that moment, the weight on my chest finally eased, though it didn't feel like much of a victory. As I walked through the crowded streets, the tears came, slowly filling my eyes. It felt like the heavy stone inside my heart had turned into a blade, twisting deeper and deeper until breathing became a struggle. I clenched my wrists, trying to hold myself together as memories rushed through my mind. How long was I going to keep punishing myself like this? I looked up at the sky, the sunset painting the clouds in soft pinks and purples, and I realized that my heart was starting to go numb. The pain wasn't as sharp anymore. Maybe I was finally ready to let him go. That night, David came home with one of those cakes I used to pretend to love. "Barbara, you must have been so tired after bringing me breakfast. How about a little treat to cheer you up?" he said, smiling as he held out a chocolate cake with a cute bear on top. It wasn't my favorite flavor. No, this was her favorite. His precious Sarah. He kept buying me this cake, over and over, never once remembering what I liked. But then again, I guess he never really knew me. I've always preferred strawberry. I unwrapped the cake and took a bite, barely tasting it as the chocolate melted in my mouth. It was bitter, though I wasn't sure if that was the cake or just how I felt inside. He would never know. He would never know that I liked strawberries. I was getting used to this feeling, this quiet, dull ache. It was almost comforting now. After that day, I stopped making those cute lunches for him. The ones I used to spend so much time on. I didn't bother ironing his clothes anymore either. The gifts he gave me? I stopped caring about those too. The things I once treasured and kept so carefully were now scattered around, forgotten. At first, David didn't notice the difference. But after a while, he started to see that something had changed. One day, he wrapped his arms around me and smiled. "Barbara, you've been working so hard. Why don't we hire someone to help out? You shouldn't have to do all this." I nodded quickly, agreeing that it was the best idea in the world. If he thought all of this didn't matter, and then fine. I wasn't going to argue. He wasn't worth the effort anymore. Once we hired someone to help around the house, I realized how much time I'd been wasting on him. Suddenly, I had space time to breathe, to live. I started going out more, pampering myself, dressing up just because I felt like it. I was learning to enjoy life again, finding ways to make it beautiful without him. And slowly, I started to feel like a whole new person. It didn't take much. Even with a simple outfit, I was turning heads. "Wow, Barbara, you look amazing," David said, smiling at me like nothing had changed. After noticing the changes in me, David became even more tender and more attentive. I guess what they say is true: when you start loving yourself, others start loving you too. Life was calm for a while. Until one day, he found one of his gifts tossed in the trash. His smile faltered, freezing midway. I felt a twinge of guilt as I avoided his gaze, hoping he wouldn't press the issue. I'd gotten used to carelessly discarding things, but this time, I hadn't realized he was standing right there. He forced a thin smile, his lips barely moving. "Barbara, if you didn't like it, you could have just told me. I could have gotten you something else." I gave a small, awkward laugh and said nothing. What was the point? After that incident, he started hovering more, checking in on me constantly. But no matter how closely he watched, I knew deep down that I would never be his number one. "Barbara," he said one evening, "I have a work event tonight. Gonna be home late. Be good, okay? Lock the door behind me, don't let anyone in. Got it?" My heart leaped a little, but I made sure to keep my head down, pretending to pout. David chuckled, ruffling my hair like I was some obedient pet. All right. I just transferred $70,000 to your account. Why don't you treat yourself? Call up some friends and have a fun night out. But remember to be home early," he added with a wink. I nodded eagerly, all too happy to agree. As soon as he left, I checked my account, and the numbers brought a sense of calm over me. This was all I needed. It was what I deserved. And there was another reason I was so eager for him to leave. Just as David stepped out, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him, the man I'd been thinking about. It had been 2 years of walking this tightrope, trying to balance a life I didn't even want anymore. Sure, part of me stayed because breaking away was never easy. But let's be real, the real reason I stayed? The money. The life David and I had built together was hard to walk away from, especially with his knack for making investments pay off. David always had a way of spotting the perfect moment to strike, whether it was the stock market or some new fund. He never missed an opportunity to turn a profit. I'd learned to listen closely when he talked about the market. I'd memorized his advice and it had paid off. Between his tips and the little bonuses he'd give me now and then, I'd quietly built up quite a nice little fortune of my own. He mentioned that the next big investment surge was just around the corner. This was my last chance to cash in before everything changed. And with financial freedom comes another kind of hunger, one that David could never satisfy. Especially since I wasn't the one who held his heart. So I started looking elsewhere. I'd set my sights on his friend Matthew. David had warned me about him and told me to be careful around him. But I'd brushed it off. I figured he was just jealous or paranoid. What did he know about what I needed? When the truth finally hit me, it stung in ways I hadn't expected. One night, after too many drinks, I went to Matthew and spilled everything, my frustrations, my loneliness. I hadn't planned on it turning into anything, but it did. Matthew came from a good family, and at first, he was hesitant. He knew this was messy, and he didn't want to be involved. But I can be persuasive when I want to be. And after some back and forth, he finally gave in. We spent the next 2 years tangled in a secret affair, the thrill of it burning hotter with every stolen moment. But today, Matthew had given me an ultimatum. Either you leave David, or we're done. As much as I hated the idea of losing him, the pull of what we had was too strong to resist. What took you so long? I complained, grabbing his arm when he finally showed up. Matthew didn't seem as excited as usual. His face was blank, almost cold. Well, have you made up your mind? He asked, voice flat. I rolled my eyes. Really? You want to talk about this now? I dangled the hotel key in front of him with a grin. Let's discuss it upstairs, shall we? His eyes darkened, and before I knew it, he was kissing me hard. We stumbled toward the hotel room, lips locked, and everything else faded away. Just as we reached the door, a voice cut through the heat of the moment. Sarah, maybe we should save that for once we're inside, don't you think? I froze. That voice, it was unmistakable. I slowly looked up, my heart pounding in my chest, and found myself staring into David's eyes. Somehow, in our rush, I had shoved Matthew against the wall, pinning him there, and now David stood directly behind us. His eyes met mine. For a moment, everything stopped. The world held its breath. The silence was deafening. Chapter 4. Well, would you look at that? Are you guys here too? What a small world. The second those words left my mouth, David's face went pale. Aren't you supposed to be home? What the hell are you doing here, with him? He hadn't spotted Matthew yet. Quick to react, I shoved Matthew through the nearest door, slamming it shut before David could catch a glimpse. Oh, come on! You're out here working late, and you expect me to sit at home like some faithful little wife. We're not exactly saints, are we? Let's not make this more dramatic than it needs to be. David's expression twisted, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. Oh, it's dramatic now. Is that guy too scared to face me? How about you bring him out here, huh? Let's see how brave he really is. I crossed my arms, staring him down. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore, David. I'm not your property. His jaw clenched, clearly wanting to argue, but then he glanced at Sarah, standing awkwardly to the side. His anger simmered, but he bit his tongue. Instead, he glared at me with a look that could burn through steel. I'm your brother, Barbara. Or have you forgotten that? I'm trying to keep you from making a fool of yourself. I raised an eyebrow. Brother? Really? When did we start playing happy families? I smirked. And in case you haven't noticed, my hearing's been just fine for a while now. David froze, his face a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Well, if you're so keen on disowning me, let's not pretend we're anything more than strangers. I turned my attention to Sarah, who looked like she'd been caught in the middle of a soap opera she hadn't signed up for. I flashed her a smile, sweet as sugar. "Hi there. I used to be David's girlfriend. Oh, wait, not anymore. You two enjoy yourselves, all right? Just don't make it too awkward for me." With that, I turned on my heel and walked into the room. I'd expected it to hurt, to feel some kind of sting from saying it out loud. But surprisingly, all I felt was relief. The door clicked shut behind me, and there was Matthew leaning against the wall, a smug grin tugging at the corners of his lips. "Well? Happy now?" I said, smirking back. "From here on out, you're my only priority." The tension in his face softened just a bit. He casually lifted his shirt, revealing his toned abs, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Think you've earned a reward?" His playful grin widened, and without a second thought, I lunged for him. There was a loud pounding on the door behind us, but I didn't care. Let them knock all night. The next morning, I returned to the villa. David was slumped on the couch, a mess of disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes. He looked nothing like the man I used to know. The once confident, put-together David was gone, replaced by someone hollow and beaten down. His stubble had grown out, and that sharpness in his eyes completely dulled. "Oh, you're back. When did you come in?" His voice was raspy, strained as if he hadn't spoken in hours. His gaze locked on mine, and I could see the redness in his eyes deepen. To anyone else, he might have looked like the victim here. Typical. Men always pull this kind of act. As I stood there, a flash of last night flickered through my mind, and I couldn't help but smirk. The soreness in my back reminded me of how relentless Matthew had been. I rubbed my lower back absent-mindedly. He'd acted like he didn't want it, but if his enthusiasm was anything to go by, he was all in. 5 rounds, and he still wasn't ready to stop. If I hadn't come back to grab my stuff, I'd probably still be tangled up in his sheets. Wild? Sure. But I wasn't complaining. The smile playing on my face seemed to cut through David like a knife. He shot to his feet, rage flickering in his eyes. "I asked you a question. When did you come back?" I shrugged, completely unfazed. "The same day your brother came home." His face drained of color. He took a step back as if the words physically hit him. "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Tell you? So you could humiliate me again? So you could make me look like a fool in front of everyone? Weren't you the one who said I was nothing, just a placeholder for someone else? Well, now you've got what you wanted. You mean nothing to me either." Before he could respond, I grabbed my already packed bags and started toward the door. But David lunged forward, grabbing my wrist with a desperation I hadn't expected. The grip hurt, and I winced, my eyes narrowing at him. "Let go. Barbara." He rasped, his voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I treated you like a substitute. I admit it. But after all these years, how can you just walk away?" I yanked my hand free, my voice cold and final. "You were the one who broke us first." Chapter 5. "What? Trying to keep me now? Too late." With that, I left with my suitcase. David seemed to want to follow, but his phone rang. Probably Sarah calling. But it didn't matter anymore. After leaving David, I quickly fell into Mark's arms. I thought we'd have a happy ending, but like David, he couldn't give me a proper status for now. "Barbara, it's my fault. Give me some time, okay?" His deep voice had a unique charm, making my heart race. But I pushed him away. "Hey, I gave you my promise. What about you? How will you take responsibility? I'm not an easy girl to fool. If you can't marry me, leave early." After scolding Mark, I returned to my big house alone. Life without financial worries was nice, always smiling. But after a while, the empty house felt lacking. Memories of my time with Mark flashed in my mind. Each meeting was vivid, his face deeply imprinted in my heart. Used to having someone, being alone again was hard. "Hey, at home? Let's meet some handsome guys. My friend's excited voice on the phone. A little gift to help you forget that jerk. Don't let this get you down. Change often, and you won't get hurt. Her words energized me. Right, change often, and no one can truly hurt me. Send me the location. Half an hour later, I was enjoying myself with new friends. Haha, if I knew you guys were so fun, I'd have come sooner. Looking at the lively faces in front of me, I couldn't help but smile. Who wants to be my boyfriend? Handsome guy A. I do. Handsome guy B. I'm in. Young guy C. Pick me, sis. The scene in front of me was very satisfying. All right then. Barbara, what are you doing here? A very familiar voice broke the cheerful atmosphere, followed by a pair of fiery eyes. You let yourself go like this when I'm not around? Mark's face was livid, his gaze at me almost spitting fire. But I didn't care. Before, I might have worried about our relationship, knowing he was very skilled in bed. But things were different now. Since we couldn't continue, there was no need to entangle. What does it have to do with you? I responded coldly, looking him straight in the eye. You have no right to say these things anymore. My friend, seeing Mark's outstanding appearance, immediately came over and said, Wow, you're quite lucky. Where did you meet this handsome guy? Introduce us? Before I could explain, he roughly picked me up. What are you doing? Put me down. No matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't escape his strong arms. I'll marry you. His words made me instantly calm down. Are you serious? I carefully observed his handsome but serious face, confirming his intention. If he truly wanted to marry, I could forgive the past. Yes. His face was tense as he said, You are never allowed to go to such places again, understand? I deliberately responded provocatively. We'll see how you behave. Chapter 6. After that, Mark's efficiency was astonishing. Within days, the whole city knew about our engagement. Seeing the trending topic on social media, Mark's engagement, my cheeks flushed. What I had desperately wanted for 7 years but never got was easily achieved with a different person. This made me realize the importance of not clinging to one tree. Barbara, is your ex Mark? My good buddy? David suddenly appeared, yelling at me. Running into him at the villa was truly unlucky. I glanced at him, annoyed. Who do you think you are? Coming here to ask me such questions? David was taken aback but still tried to persuade. We've been together for so many years. I can't bear to see you suffer. Someone like you won't be accepted by the Mark family. You should know your place. Don't end up with nothing. I admit I was wrong before. I'm willing to marry you now, but you can't interfere with my personal life. I'll make sure you're financially satisfied, but our relationship must remain secret. David seemed to think he was making a huge concession. Even agreeing to marry me was a special favor. Ridiculous, I have money and looks, why should I endure such humiliation? Barbara, I know it's hard for you to accept this change. It was my fault before, but I hope you can give me a chance to make it right. Give our 7 years a chance. We've been through so much together. I believe you can't bear to end this relationship. His eyes were full of certainty, as if he thought he could control me. But he misunderstood my feelings. I no longer had any affection for him. How could he control me? Sorry, although we were together, everything ended the moment you betrayed me. Don't even think about marriage, I feel disgusted just seeing you. Hearing this, David's face changed constantly. Barbara, you're just saying this out of anger, right? You should be a reasonable person. Sarah is just a very good friend. I can't completely abandon her, please understand. Even now, David tried to influence me. Absolutely absurd. I made it clear, I don't like you. Are you deaf? David looked incredulous. Barbara, how can you talk to me like this? Did Mark make you this way? You used to be gentle and considerate, never said such harsh words. Character depends on the person. For someone like you, acknowledging you is already generous. Barbara. Seeing David still unwilling to give up, I was ready to lash out. Just then, someone hugged me from behind, bringing a sense of warmth. A familiar deep voice came from behind. Sorry, my fiancé doesn't want to waste time listening to your nonsense. Seeing Mark approach, David's face changed instantly. As a friend, how can you steal my girlfriend? Aren't you ashamed? Mark's smile grew brighter, pulling me closer. Barbara is now my fiancée. I didn't steal her, you didn't cherish her and don't deserve her. Regarding Barbara and me, it's none of your business, thief. David was furious, glaring at him, as if he had lost something precious. Why do you say I have no right? He's my fiancé. To us, you're irrelevant. If you still consider my fiancé a friend, come to the party this afternoon. If not, disappear from the Mark family. I smiled at Mark. Honey, you don't mind losing this so-called friend, right? Chapter 7. Mark smiled gently. Whatever you say. David's face turned ugly. Barbara, are you really this heartless? I glared at him. Get lost. David gritted his teeth. Fine, don't regret it. I didn't know how Mark handled his parents, but the engagement went smoothly. In front of everyone, we signed the marriage certificate. Did you hear? Mark's fiancée had a 7-year relationship before him. No way. With his conditions, why would he choose such a woman? The chairman and his wife wouldn't agree. Who knows? If they got this far, the chairman must have agreed. It seems Mark really cares for her. These rumors made me uneasy, my face pale. Just because I had a 7-year relationship, does that mean I can't find happiness? In a daze, I seemed to see David's smug face. His gaze seemed to say, see, without me, you're nothing. Anger made me tremble. This jerk, if he can't have me, he wants to ruin me. At that moment, a warm hand tightly held mine, meeting Mark's determined eyes. Barbara, to me, you're the most special. Ignore those ignorant comments. His words warmed my heart. I looked at the man in front of me, my eyes gradually lighting up. Everyone, this is my fiancée, the one I love most. If anyone dares insult her, I won't let it slide. Our family's lawyers aren't to be trifled with. His words silenced everyone, making him look even more dazzling. It seemed I had truly found the right person. David, seeing his plan fail, left angrily. I didn't know what got into him, but he announced his engagement to Sarah. I focused on preparing for my wedding, immersed in happiness, ignoring David. But he wouldn't give up, even showing up at my door. Barbara, my engagement with her was just to make you care. David grabbed my hand, eyes full of tenderness. I now realize, after 7 years, you've rooted in my heart. Since you left, I've been thinking of you in our little house. Do you know how much I like you, love you? Just one word from you, and I'll call off the engagement. Don't you want me to marry someone else? Hearing this confession made me feel sick. If he truly couldn't let go, why didn't he cherish me before? When I was there, he thought of someone else. When she appeared, he missed me. Absolutely disgusting. I slapped him hard, feeling slightly relieved. Barbara, does this mean you forgive me? David's eyes flashed with joy. Glancing at his face, I slapped him again. How could I? You disgust me. David's once bright eyes dimmed. I ignored him, feeling only revulsion. As a result, David called off his engagement with Sarah. Chapter 8. This didn't affect me much. I continued preparing for my wedding. My heart was full of happiness. Miss Rue, let's talk. Meeting Sarah again, she looked much more haggard. Though still decisive, her mental state was clearly poor. In the caf, she softly said, "I learned about your past and sympathize with what you went through. But you're doing well now and have broken up with David. Please don't see him anymore." Her words surprised me. Hey, I have a great husband now. Why would I bother with that trash? You're the one who came to me. You! Sarah's face turned red with anger. David always loved me. If you weren't so fickle, he wouldn't ignore me. I can't force him to ignore you. Besides, didn't you leave him hanging for 7 years? Now that you're back and he's not obedient, you want to cause trouble? Why drag me into it? He's like that, only caring about himself. And now he's like a leech, clinging to me. I can't shake him off. If you can help me get rid of this nuisance, I'll call you my ancestor. Sarah's eyes turned vicious, gritting her teeth. Fine, I'll be kind and help you. I called David. Westgate Caf, come quickly. He has an important meeting today, he won't come. Sarah retorted. I shrugged. Let's see. In less than 15 minutes, David rushed in. Barbara, are you ready to forgive me? His eyes were only on me, not noticing Sarah beside him. You know how much I care about you. We've been together for 7 years. I believe you can't easily let go. If you forgive me, I'll do anything. I pretended to hesitate. But you should have a girlfriend now, right? Sarah is just a friend. If you agree, I'll cut ties with her immediately. Anything you want, I can give you, even giving up everyone else. Seeing Sarah's tearful eyes, I said lightly, Did you hear that? He said he only cares about himself. It's not because he cares about you, but because he feels particularly lost not winning you over. Since you came back, do you think he's learned to cherish you? David finally noticed Sarah, his face changing color. Sarah looked at him and suddenly laughed. Huh, I thought you really cared. From the moment you postponed the wedding, I should have known, it's not the same. I'm so foolish, deceiving myself with past memories. How ridiculous. Since that's the case, there's no need to entangle. With that, Sarah grabbed her bag and left without looking back. David seemed to want to follow but stopped, looking at me. Can you accept my apology now? Barbara! Who said I'd forgive you? Frowning at him, I said sarcastically. A self-centered man like you, even if given more chances, what's the point? Do you want me to get hurt again? How absurd! I love my current husband. Saying this, I moved closer to Mark. David's face darkened. When did he appear? It doesn't matter. Mark pulled me in for a deep kiss. I'm here to take my wife home. I smiled and kissed him back. David's face was dark as coal, his fists clenched. But Mark just tightened his embrace, making the kiss deeper. When it ended, it was just the two of us. I didn't know when David left. Thinking of his dark face, I couldn't help but laugh. Sternly, I warned. Don't mess with random people again. Looking at my serious husband, I laughed and promised. Don't worry, I'll listen to you.